Alright, so here's the setup. A guy's got a stable job, a modest house, 2 young kids, a wife. One morning he wakes up and she's just gone. Note on the pillow. Something about finding herself. She doesn't take the kids, doesn't fight for custody, spends the next 9 years posting motivational quotes online while he raises those kids completely alone. Then the life coach empire collapses, the money runs out, and suddenly, out of nowhere, she wants back in. His kids had been waiting for that conversation their entire lives. Just not in the way she expected. My wife abandoned our 2 kids to follow a life coach cult, signed away her parental rights, and vanished for 9 years. When she came back broke, wanting to be their mom. My kids had already made their decision. 9 years is a long time to process something. Long enough that the kids barely remember a different version of life. Long enough that some of it feels like it happened to a different guy. But 2 weeks ago, that whole chapter showed back up. And I figured I finally need to get it out somewhere. I'm 41 now. I was 32 when things started unraveling. I work as an operations manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company. Steady pay, decent benefits, flexible enough that I could occasionally work from home when I needed to. My ex-wife, I'll call her Lauren, worked part-time as an office coordinator at a small accounting firm, which gave her the schedule flexibility to be home with the kids in the afternoons. We had 2 kids at the time, a daughter who was 7 and a son who was 5. We owned a modest house in the suburbs of Phoenix. Nothing flashy, but we were comfortable. Bills paid, savings growing, kids in decent schools. The first several years of the marriage were genuinely good. Nothing movie-worthy, just solid. Weekends at the park, soccer games on Saturday mornings where we'd sit in camping chairs with coffee, dinner most nights together as a family. Lauren was present back then, engaged, good with the kids when they were small, patient in a way that comes naturally to some people and doesn't for others. I liked our life. I wasn't chasing anything bigger. I thought we were on the same page about that. Looking back, I don't know when that stopped being true. I genuinely thought we were doing fine. Looking back, I can trace the first cracks to about a year before she left. Lauren started spending a lot of time on social media, specifically following these boss babe influencer types who claimed to have cracked the code on freedom, income, and what they called authentic living. Posts about stepping into your power, breaking free from the 9-to-5 grind, manifesting the life you deserve. I didn't worry about it at first. Figured she was restless, maybe bored. Everyone goes through phases. I wasn't going to police what she read online. Then, the weekend seminars started. $500 to $1,000 each. She'd come back from them wired and talking about abundance mindsets and releasing limiting beliefs. The credit card statements started looking different, and whenever I tried to bring it up, she'd look at me like I was the enemy. Like pointing out that we were burning money on self-help conferences was somehow a personal attack on who she was trying to become. The seminars eventually led her to something she called a mastermind group, a circle of women who met weekly at coffee shops to discuss their entrepreneurial journeys. From what I could gather, most of them were either selling MLM products, calling themselves life coaches without any actual qualifications, or billing themselves as brand consultants with no real clients. Lauren was convinced she'd found her people. I thought they sounded like a room full of people who'd watched too many Instagram reels and decided that was market research. Things at home started sliding. She was constantly on her phone, either scrolling or on long calls with women from the group. The kids would come home from school and ask for help with homework, and she'd wave them off, saying she was networking. Family dinners basically stopped. When we did all sit down together, she'd spend the whole meal talking about her plans to launch a personal branding agency, even though she had no business plan, no clients, and no experience building anything close to that. To be fair to myself, I kept thinking it was a phase. I stayed quiet a lot when I probably should have pushed back. I figured she'd hit a wall, reality would land, and she'd recalibrate. That was probably the biggest mistake I made through all of this. The kids noticed. My daughter started saying things like, "Mommy's busy again," with this flat little voice that made my chest hurt. My son would try to climb on Lauren's lap during her calls, and she'd sort of absently redirect him without looking up. I don't think she was doing it on purpose. I just think we were background noise by then. Hold on, I need to jump in here because I can't let this slide without commentary. For the listeners, this is me, the host, not the OP. These empowerment programs have Fire Festival energy baked right into the business model. Big promises, beautiful aesthetic, zero accountability. and somehow you are always the problem when it doesn't work out. They find women who are restless or unfulfilled, charge them thousands for access to a community, and hand them a brand new identity as a bonus. Lauren didn't just fall for a scam. She got a personality transplant on a payment plan. And the kids were sitting right there watching the upgrade happen without them. Then came the morning I won't forget. I woke up to find her side of the bed empty and a piece of paper on her pillow. She needed to find herself and live authentically. She felt stifled by family life and wanted to explore her potential without being held back. No mention of the kids, no indication of where she was going, just that she needed space and would be in touch when the time was right. I sat there and read it 3-4 times. Then I heard my son padding down the hallway asking for her. I spent the next few days calling everyone I could find, her parents, her close friends, her boss. Nobody knew anything useful, or if they did, they weren't sharing it. I was close to filing a missing person report when she finally texted on day 3. She was safe. She was beginning her journey. She'd explain everything eventually. A week after that, divorce papers arrived. She filed on grounds of irreconcilable differences and listed a new apartment downtown as her address, about 30 minutes from the house. She wasn't asking for custody, just occasional visitation rights. She was divorcing not just me, but her own children, and she was doing it voluntarily. I called a lawyer the same afternoon. Given that she'd abandoned the family home with no warning and wasn't seeking primary custody, my attorney told me I had a strong position. The divorce was weirdly smooth in the worst way. She didn't contest the kids, only asked for a few personal belongings and a small fraction of our savings, way less than she was entitled to. It was like she needed every door sealed, so she couldn't second-guess herself later. The kids didn't understand what was happening, which is probably the hardest part to describe. My daughter kept asking if mommy didn't love us anymore. My son, he was too young to frame it in those terms, but every evening for weeks, he'd go stand by the living room window and watch the driveway. Just wait, that image doesn't leave you. You carry that one. I had to figure out childcare, manage my job, explain to 2 small kids why their mother wasn't coming home, and hold my own grief together well enough not to fall apart in front of them. My parents came and stayed with us for several months to help with the transition, which genuinely saved me. My boss gave me flexible hours and let me work from home when I needed to. That helped more than I can explain. Pause. For anyone listening, this is me, not the OP. She had a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when it came time to decide about custody, she essentially said no thanks. I'm not even going to roast this one because it doesn't need roasting. A mother voluntarily walked away from a little boy who stood by the window every single night waiting for her car to pull up. That's not irreconcilable differences. That's Madame Manifestation choosing her personal rebrand over her own children. Some things just write themselves. Anyway, he picked up the pieces. Let's keep going. Lauren's communication after the divorce was minimal. She'd text occasionally asking vague questions about the kids, but she rarely followed through on the visitation schedule the court had set. When she did show up, the visits were short and awkward. She'd take them to a restaurant or a movie, but she couldn't connect. She didn't know what grade they were in. Didn't know their friends' names. Didn't know what shows they were into. She'd spent so much time exiting their daily life that she had no idea who they were anymore. And she didn't seem to register that. One time, I think the kids were 6 and 8 by then. She took them bowling, and my son came home crying because she'd spent most of the time texting and he'd wanted her to watch him get a strike. He got 3 of them that day. She missed everyone. He didn't say it out loud, but you could see it land. My daughter just stopped talking about those visits after a while. Asked me about it once, and she shrugged and said, "It's fine, Dad." She was 9. That kind of resignation in a 9-year-old is something you don't really recover from watching. Through some mutual acquaintances, I found out she'd fully rebranded herself online as a lifestyle entrepreneur and mindset coach. Her profiles had no photos of the kids, no mention of being a mother, no trace of the life she'd walked away from. Filtered pictures at networking events, motivational quotes, vague captions about her thriving business. From what I could piece together, she was picking up small social media gigs for local businesses while trying to build a following. Living the dream. About a year after she left, I found out she'd joined what I can only describe as a cult. Not religious in the traditional sense, but it had every marker: expensive tiered membership fees, pressure to recruit others, isolation from negative influences, which apparently included family, and complete devotion to the founder, a woman calling herself Serena Divine. Real name, Diane Cole, a former failed real estate agent from Nevada. This group specifically targeted women who felt dissatisfied with their lives and promised wealth, freedom, and fulfillment in exchange for thousands of dollars in courses, retreats, and one-on-one coaching. Lauren's visits with the kids got even more sparse over the following 2 years. Sometimes she'd cancel an hour before pickup. Sometimes she just wouldn't show. The kids stopped asking when she was coming. That quiet acceptance was somehow worse than the questions had been. My daughter once made Lauren a birthday card. She must have been 9 or 10 by then, and spent a while decorating it with markers. She was proud of it. Lauren didn't show up for that visit. My daughter put the card in a drawer, and I never saw it again. I didn't ask. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. My parents eventually moved back to their own place once we'd found our footing. I built a solid childcare routine, kept the kids in the same schools, made sure they had stability even when everything else felt off. My daughter threw herself into art and later into computer programming. My son found soccer and turned out to be genuinely good at it. They were both growing up faster than I was ready for. About 3 years after the divorce, I started dating again. Slowly. I wasn't about to bring someone into their lives unless it actually made sense. I met Kate, a kindergarten teacher and a single mom herself, at a mutual friend's backyard birthday thing. Wait, no. It was actually his kid's birthday party. Whatever, doesn't matter. The point is, it was low-key, nothing was forced, and we talked for like 2 hours without noticing. We took things slowly. Months of just hanging out, figuring out if the kids actually got along with her, making sure nothing felt manufactured. They liked her. Not in a she's trying too hard way, just genuinely liked her. She was patient, calm, never tried to step into a role she wasn't invited into. 5 years after my divorce, Kate and I got married. Small ceremony, close family, nobody on a guest list longer than 40 people. My daughter was one of Kate's bridesmaids. She thought that was the most important thing that had ever happened to her. My son gave a toast that was 3 sentences long, and 2 of them were about the food. A year after the wedding, Kate legally adopted both kids with Lauren's consent, which Lauren gave without much discussion. She signed the papers, handed over her legal parental rights, and that was that. Bittersweet is the only word for it. On one side, my kids now had a real mother figure, someone who came to every soccer game, every school play, every Tuesday, that didn't have anything special about it. On the other side, the formality of that adoption was just confirming out loud what we'd all already known for years. Lauren had made her choice a long time ago. Kate and I had a baby boy 2 years ago. He's currently the most spoiled toddler alive because his 16-year-old sister and 14-year-old brother treat him like a team mascot. We moved to a slightly bigger house in the same school district, so the older kids wouldn't lose their friends or their routines. Life settled. Normal, stable, genuinely good. Then 2 weeks ago, I got a text from a number I almost didn't recognize. Lauren, asking if we could meet. Yo, timeout. You know what's genuinely impressive in a terrible way? She managed to find a program specifically designed to take money from women who'd already made bad decisions and convince them that the bad decisions were actually growth. That's like getting hit by a car, and then the paramedic charges you for the ambulance, the stitches, and sells you a masterclass on traffic awareness. Serena Divine, or Diane Cole from Nevada, built an entire business on manufactured regret and repackaged it as empowerment. The IRS and karma tend to end up in the same zip code eventually. More on that real soon. I agreed to meet Lauren at a coffee shop near my office. I went in not knowing what to expect, but what I found wasn't anything I'd prepared for. The polished online persona, the filtered life coach with the motivational captions, wasn't there. She looked tired, genuinely worn down in a way that made her look older than she was. Her hair was different. She was dressed simply, nothing performative about it. We did maybe 2 minutes of small talk before she got to it. She wanted to come back into the kids' lives, not just occasional visits, regularly. She said she'd done deep personal work and had realized that walking away from her family had been the biggest mistake of her life. Her business ventures had all failed. She was carrying significant debt. The cult had imploded publicly amid accusations of financial fraud against the founder. Diane Cole had been running a scam, and a lot of women, Lauren included, had lost a lot of money to it. She was now working as an administrative assistant at an insurance company. The same kind of 9 to 5 she used to call living in a cage. She said she missed the kids terribly and wanted a chance to make it right. Her eyes were red by the time she finished. I don't think she was performing it. I think she meant every word of it. I also don't think meaning something and deserving something are the same thing. I told her I needed time to think about it. I needed to talk to Kate, and more importantly, to the kids. I wasn't making that call on my own. That night, Kate and I talked it through for a while. She was worried, but measured about it. Both of us agreed the only thing that actually mattered was what was best for the kids, not what made us feel better or worse. We decided to talk to each of them separately, without steering the conversation. I didn't want them reading our faces and telling us what they thought we wanted to hear. My daughter, who's 16 now, didn't hold back. She said she did not consider Lauren her mother. Kate had been there for everything that mattered, and she didn't have space in her life for a stranger who happened to share her DNA. She brought up specific things. How many times she'd waited for a visit that never came, calls that went to voicemail, plans that got canceled. These weren't abstract grievances. She remembered each one. My son, who's 14, was quieter about it. He doesn't have a lot of memory from before. He was 5 when she left. But that didn't mean it hadn't shaped him. He'd grown up knowing his mother had chosen to go. He'd had his own share of broken promises over the years, and he'd processed them in his own way. He said he didn't really know her. From the way he said it, I could tell that absence had its own weight for him that was different from his sister's. Less anger, more of a quiet sadness he wasn't sure what to do with. I got back to Lauren a few days later and tried to explain things as clearly and gently as I could. The kids weren't ready for a relationship right now. If she was serious about rebuilding something, maybe she could start with letters or emails. Let the kids respond on their own terms. No pressure, no timeline. I thought that was fair. Her reaction caught me off guard. She went defensive immediately. She accused me of turning the kids against her, said I'd brainwashed them, that no child would reject their own mother unless someone had poisoned them against her first. Then she said she'd take it to court if she had to, that she had rights. I reminded her calmly that she had voluntarily relinquished custody and consented to the adoption. Her legal standing was extremely limited because of choices she made. She ended the conversation in tears, telling me I'd stolen her children and ruined her life. I hung up and sat there staring at the wall for a while. Hold on, let me make sure I have this right. She left. She skipped visitation. She signed the adoption papers. She scrubbed the kids from her social media like they never existed. And now, after 9 years of all that, she's threatening court? That's some of the most audacious revisionist history since someone tried to convince the Fire Festival crowd the experience built character. Madame Manifestation spent a decade manifesting a life without her children, and now she wants to manifest her way back in through the legal system. Accountability Tour is off to a rough start. A few days after that call, I got an email from Lauren. Completely different tone. Apologetic, measured. She said she'd talked to a lawyer who confirmed what I'd already told her. She had very little legal standing given the adoption and her documented history of minimal involvement. She asked if the letters arrangement was still possible. She'd respect the kids' pace. She understood they needed time. I talked to both kids. My daughter said she could write if she wanted to. No promise to write back. My son said the same thing, roughly. Neither of them seemed upset by the idea. Just not exactly enthusiastic about it either. I took that as the clearest green light I was going to get. I told Lauren she could send letters or emails to me directly. I'd share them with the kids if the content was appropriate. The kids would decide if and when to respond, completely on their own timeline. Any return to threats or boundary violations ended the arrangement. Full stop. She agreed. Seemed almost relieved to have something. 3 days after her first letters arrived, I read them before passing them on. Honestly, they were decent. Apologetic without being manipulative. She acknowledged she'd been absent without making it the kids' responsibility to fix. No guilt-tripping, no over-explaining, no big dramatic statements. Just an introduction, basically, like she was writing to people she didn't know well, and was trying not to scare off. I sat with both letters for a few minutes before I brought them upstairs. My daughter read hers at the kitchen table while I made dinner. She set it down, stared at the counter for a second, and said, "It's weird getting a letter from a stranger who knows everything about you." Which is, yeah, that's definitely what it is. My son read his twice, folded it back up, and slid it under the edge of his laptop. He didn't say much about it. I didn't push him. I thought we were off to as reasonable a start as anyone could hope for. Then the school called. Lauren had shown up at the kids' school trying to see them. The front office followed their security protocols. She wasn't on any approved contact list, and called me immediately. I left work and drove over. I found her in the lobby arguing with the principal. When she saw me, she started crying. She said she couldn't wait any longer. She just wanted to see their faces. The principal took us back to a private office, and we got her calm enough to talk. She genuinely seemed surprised when I pointed out it had been 3 days since the kids received her letters. 3 days. She'd convinced herself in that window that I was intercepting her messages, that the kids had replied, and she wasn't getting it. None of that was true. She'd sent letters to teenagers and expected same-day results. I looked at her across that table and thought, she still doesn't understand how this works. She still thinks time moves differently for everyone else than it does for her. The principal was firm, but not cruel. Showing up unannounced wasn't acceptable regardless of the biological relationship. Lauren apologized. She looked embarrassed once it was laid out plainly. I walked her outside and made it clear this was the kind of thing that would end any arrangement entirely. She said she understood. The kids found out from classmates before they even got home from school. My daughter used the phrase psycho behavior, and she meant every syllable. My son asked very quietly if she could just show up at our house too. I told him no, and that he was safe. But the fact that he felt the need to ask that, man. Then my daughter found Lauren's social media accounts. She showed me on her phone. Lauren had been posting about reuniting with her precious children and reclaiming her role as their mother. References to obstacles put in place by negative influences. Most disturbing, she dug up old childhood photos of the kids, photos from before she left when they were small, and was using them to present herself online as an active, present mother. Birthday cake photos from years she wasn't even at the birthday. Beach trip pictures from a vacation she hadn't come on. A whole narrative built on 9-year-old images and zero recent reality. My daughter scrolled through it in silence, and then set the phone face down on the table. She's still fake, just in a different way now. I called Lauren that night. I walked her through exactly what the kids' reactions had been, to the school visit, to the posts. I told her that using the kids' images to build a false narrative wasn't manifestation, it was manipulation. She went back and forth between apologetic and defensive, said she was just trying to put positive energy out there. When I pointed out that the positive energy was built on photos she had no current relationship attached to, she went quiet. Eventually, she said she'd take the post down and step back. I reached out to my lawyer to go over what options I had if she kept pushing boundaries. Okay, pause. I need a second here. For the listeners, this is still me, not the OP. She showed up at their school. She posted their childhood photos to perform motherhood she hadn't practiced in 9 years. This is some serious gone girl energy. Not the dangerous kind, the delusional kind. The kind where someone has fully rewritten their own story in their head and the rest of the world just hasn't gotten the memo yet. The school visit was impulsive. The social media posts were strategic. Those are two different problems, and neither one suggests she's actually changed. What happens next, though, nobody saw coming. Final update. After the school incident and the social media fallout, I sat down with the whole family, me, Kate, both kids, and we just talked. No agenda, no decisions to force. We wanted the kids to feel heard and figure out together what made sense going forward. My daughter surprised me. She asked if she could write Lauren a letter herself. Not to rebuild anything, just because she had things she wanted to say, and paper felt safer than a phone call. She wanted it to come from her, in her words, on her terms. My son wasn't ready to write anything, but said maybe someday. I told them both there was no pressure either way. Her letter was something mature, direct, no drama. She told Lauren she appreciated the apology, but wasn't interested in a mother-daughter relationship. She said Kate had been her mom in every way that actually counted, and she didn't have room or need for another version of that. She addressed the school visit and the social media posts head-on, told her those actions had made her feel unsafe and disrespected. And then she wrote something I keep coming back to. Maybe someday we can know each other as people, but not as mother and daughter. She was 16 years old when she wrote that. I read it, offered 2 small suggestions she considered and mostly kept, and sent it to Lauren's email. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Lauren's younger sister. We'd barely had any contact over the years. She'd been estranged from Lauren for most of the cult period, but had reconnected recently when Lauren had reached out looking for support. She was calling to tell me that Lauren had been admitted to the hospital. She'd taken an overdose of sleeping pills. A neighbor had come by and found her in time. She was physically okay. I sat with that for a minute after the call ended. The sister was careful to explain the context. While the letter may have been part of it, Lauren had been struggling with severe depression for months, probably a lot longer. The collapse of everything she'd built, the money she'd lost to the program, the years of regret she'd been carrying without ever really dealing with. It had all been compounding. She'd run out of her medication about a week before and hadn't gotten it refilled. The letter didn't cause this. 9 years of choices did. The sister asked if I'd tell the kids, said she thought they had a right to know, but understood completely if I wanted to hold off. I talked it through with Kate, then sat down with both kids that night. Their reactions were complicated, which is exactly what you'd expect. My daughter's first instinct was to worry that she'd caused it, that the letter had pushed Lauren over. I explained what the sister had told me, that this was years of accumulated weight, not a single piece of paper, that Lauren's struggle had been building long before the letter arrived. My daughter took that in quietly. She didn't fully let herself off the hook right away, but she heard it. She asked me later that night, when it was just us, if I thought Lauren had ever really loved them. I told her I genuinely believed she had. That people can love something and still make terrible choices about it. That sometimes people are so tangled up in their own stuff that they can't show up for the people who need them, even when they care. She thought about that for a while and said, "That's kind of worse, actually." Yeah, it kind of is. My son asked practical questions. Would she be okay? What happened next? Would she have people with her? And then, after a pause, he asked if we could send flowers to the hospital. That surprised me more than almost anything else in this whole story. I told him absolutely. We sent a simple bouquet with a card wishing her healing and rest. Both kids signed their names. Just their names. No love, no familial terms. That felt right. Honest without being cold. Lauren was transferred to a psychiatric care unit for further evaluation. The sister kept me updated. She also told me something I hadn't known. Lauren had been planning to move back to her hometown in Oregon the following month. She'd arranged a job transfer within her insurance company and had quietly been preparing to leave. The sister thought the combination of the impending move, the failed attempt to reconnect, and everything she'd been holding for years had finally hit critical mass at once. My daughter seemed relieved hearing that Lauren would be physically farther away. She still felt genuine sympathy. She said so directly, which I was proud of. But the relief was the stronger feeling. My son said he just hoped she'd be okay. And honestly, so did I. The sister asked if she could stay in touch with the kids going forward, even after Lauren moves. She'd been estranged for years herself, but she had some positive early memories with the kids from before the split and wanted to know them as people if they were open to it. Both kids said yes. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if Lauren actually gets better or eventually builds something real with the kids on their terms, or if Oregon becomes permanent distance. I'm not going to push anything in any direction. What I do know is that my kids handled something genuinely hard with more clarity than most adults would manage. My daughter wrote a letter that was honest without being cruel. My son asked to send flowers to someone who had hurt him repeatedly. There's also one thing I keep thinking about that I haven't totally resolved. The kids are going to have questions as they get older. About Lauren. About why things went the way they did. About what kind of relationship, if any, they want with a woman who is biologically their mother, but practically a stranger. I don't have a roadmap for that. I don't think anyone does. All I can do is make sure they know the door to that conversation is always open, and that whatever they decide, I've got their backs. They didn't learn any of that from the void she left behind. Kate said something to me the other night that I keep coming back to. She said families change shape over time, and what actually holds them together isn't biology. It's the people who show up and keep showing up, even on the days that don't have anything special about them. That about covers it for me. I've got nothing left to add. Look, nobody stole those kids from her. Nobody poisoned them. She made choices, repeatedly, over years, and those choices had weight. Kids remember who was there for the Tuesday nights that had nothing special about them. They remember who showed up. My daughter writing that letter at 16, clear, honest, no bitterness, that's more self-possession than most adults have. My son asking to send flowers to someone who hurt him, that's character. None of that came from the void she left. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done? Subscribe if you're not already. New stories every day. New stories every day. New stories every day. New stories every day.